Hey everybody, welcome to the episode number 77 of Cameron's Nostalgia Podcast. I'm your host, Cameron Strickland, and today I have with me David Gekler. How are you?
I'm doing just fine today. How about you?
I'm doing good.
Great. Sorry
Now,
about the reflection in my glasses. Your image is very bright. I have a very good monitor.
nice. Now, for any of you guys who don't know, David is a sound mixer for Baby Einstein.
No, not Baby Einstein. You keep saying that. It's not true. I really have not worked on Baby Einstein.
Oh, right.
I played Baby Einstein for my daughter, who's now a 23-year-old nurse.
He's a sound mixer for Wild and Crazy Kids Rescue 911. Uh, Once Upon a Time, a Cinderella Story. Cold Case, and many more.
Mm,
So, welcome to the show, David.
thank you.
All right. So, how did you get interested in sound?
Well, I'll try and tell the shorter story was I started out in recording studios with friends who had bands. And then while I was in a recording studio, a guy came in and said, "Hey, you can work those big mixers." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, I've got a truck and I do sports. I'd like you to come out and give it a try." So I started my career in sports television. And those are those big trucks you see parked out of stadiums. And I was the mixer for basketball, baseball, football, you name it. I did pretty much every sport there is. And I found that fascinating because I had to figure out how to put microphones on a field or a court or whatever to pick up the sounds properly and then mix those sounds so that the audience can hear everything that's happening. And I found that totally a blast. It was fun to do. And I did that for a couple of years, culminating in what is considered the ultimate audio mixing job, which is mixing the Monday Night Football. I did all the West Coast versions of that for a guy who had cancer and couldn't do all of them for the whole year. So I picked up the end of the year and I did NFL football. And that's a big deal back in the early 1980s. Now, what also happened in the 1980s was people who were into using drugs in the business. And so I'm working in a truck, and the person comes into the front part of the truck, which is where it's called production. That's where the director and the technical director are, and all the producers and all the ad people. And someone brings in a tray of cocaine, and everybody's sniffing cocaine in front of me. They open the door to my booth behind them. They offer it to me, and I can't work and take drugs at the same time. And so, anyways, after about a year of that, that would be like 1981. I was talking to the truck engineer, the guy who knows everything about the truck, and he said, "Dave, you don't look like you're too happy." I said, "Yeah, I'm getting kind of get tired of this mess that's every night, every game we do, everybody's all drugged out, and I don't want to do that." And he goes, "Well, maybe it's time for you to get out of this business and go back to college and get a degree, and you can write your own ticket and do anything you want because you have done the ultimate of all the sports shows." I'm like, Oh, that sounds good. Now, I had made a lot of money doing that, so I could actually go back to college. I got back into college. I just blew through college as fast as I could. I was taking 24 units a semester, which was unheard of at the time. And I think even to this day, it's unheard of to do. But I was, all the courses were easy for me. And I got a degree, a worthless degree in television and film. And the thing that I got out of college was a beautiful wife, and I also got it to start over because I burned all those sports television bridges. I didn't want to do that anymore. And I started over. So I got into doing documentaries. And so I'm the guy with the little recorder on my side and a boom in my arms, running behind a camera guy, chasing down a person or a chimpanzee or whatever, you name it. That's the kind of stuff I did. And you basically take that kind of job and you work it as the network, and then you work for another camera guy who brings you along on his project. And as you do that, your network expands. And that's when I got into more network type shows for ABC, NBC, CBS. I would just go in and do sound for one of those interviews or whatever. And then the camera guy contacted me and said, "Hey, you want to do this show called Rescue 911?" And I did that. Now, those are the kind of shows that you can go off and you do it for like, it's the shoots for a maximum of 6 days, and then I'd be home for another 10 days, go back out for another 6 days. And basically, I'm just doing all this kind of recording stuff in the field for a show called Rescue 911. And that was the start of my single camera film style career, I call it, where you're just working with one camera person, shooting one thing and shooting it kind of film style. And that was a blast. So that's kind of how I got into doing sound. I just kind of went from garage band to doing sound for sports to doing sound for camera. Now,
Nice.
I can tell a million stories about all that stuff, but I don't want to bore you.
Nice. So you worked for Wild and Crazy Kids.
Yes. Yeah.
What was it like working on that show?
The funny thing is, my daughter today is actually at Magic Mountain of California. And it's the Six Flags in California, in Southern California. And the very day of the sh first day of the shoot of Wild and Crazy Kids was a game show for kids. And the first day was we had to rig up the biggest roller coaster they had there, which was called Colossus, and it's still there. And the challenge was for the kids to ride in the roller coaster and start out with a full pitcher of water in their hands and try and end up with the most water possible at the end of the ride. And of course, none of them could accomplish that because it's really hard to do it on a roller coaster. And the water was colored, by the way, so it would get all over their white t-shirts. So you would know for sure that they would spill water. And that was the very first episode of that show. And we shot it at Magic Mountain, where my daughter is exactly right now. It's so weird that you brought that up. It brings back a lot of good memories. That was a fun show to do. It was a kids' game show, basically. And we were always outside doing some crazy game.
Nice. So what was it like working on Rescue 911?
Now, Rescue 911 was a CBS show. It was hosted by William Shatner of Star Trek fame. He, um, he, however, never went out on the road with any of us. It was basically a director and a camera guy, a producer, and me. And I worked with basically one camera guy most of the time. And we would go to a town and we would recreate something that happened there. It could be like a pile of pipes fell on a man in a factory. How did they rescue him? And then we would recreate the whole thing. We would start out, the first 2 days, we start out by interviewing the guy who the thing happened to and all the people involved with the whole situation. And then we would go with stunt men, stunt women, and recreate that accident in the factory, for example, where the pipes fell on a stunt man instead of the real guy. And then the fire crew comes and rescues them and does all that good stuff. That's how the TV show went. Now, I can tell you a secret about the TV show, though. If the ratings ever dropped, we would do a show that actually had somebody dying. We would recreate somebody getting killed at something that they did, and the ratings would just skyrocket at that point. So whenever the ratings started to drop a little bit, they put a show in where somebody passed away. Now, the cool thing I got to do with Rescue 911 is I got to go, the camera guy and I kind of specialize in doing the actual documentaries because we both had documentary backgrounds. We would actually go to a town and we would go out with the rescue crew every day with every rescue. And a director would go with us and we'd see if we get a story that would be good for television. And we shot all sorts of shows. I spent a week with the air crew in Maryland where we sat in the rain all week and couldn't go anywhere until finally one day we got to go out and do a rescue. And that made a great story of a girl getting rescued who got hit by a car and had to go to the Children's Hospital in Metro DC. The other great story that we did, the one that we were nominated for an Emmy, and I don't remember to this day if we got an Emmy for that one or not, is a girl with her family. They're all from Norway. They're outside of Las Vegas. They got hit by a drunk driver. She got brought in with her father, who was also very badly injured. Came in and we were waiting there at the hospital for them. We could not go in the helicopter with them because they knew they were bringing back two people, so there wouldn't be room for us. So instead, what we did was we followed the family as they made the horrible decision to let their daughter pass and to let her organs be used by others. And we got the amazing opportunity to go with her heart to Berkeley Medical School, where we saw her heart put into a 50-year-old man and allowed him to live. And we actually went back 6 months later and we reunited that guy and other people who had received our organs with the family. They brought him back from Norway and they got to meet the people who all received the donor organs from their beautiful daughter. So that was quite an amazing episode to do. I was very fortunate to be part of it, I think, because it was amazing all the horrible decisions that the parents had to make, and we got that on camera as they're making that decision, and that's a real hard thing to do for any parent. Um, that's one of the most amazing stories I got to do for Rescue 911, and it was actually a documentary. We did not recreate that. All 90% of their shows were recreated. We did the 10% of the shows that were documentaries as well.
And what about Revolutionary War?
The Revolutionary War. Wow. That was basically where we just recreated all the battles of the war between Britain and America. We actually went out in the Bay of Boston and recreated a full cannon battle between two ships. And it wasn't real, of course, but we recreated that. We got to do great interviews with lots of historians that was more or less a documentary, and I've done just tons of those kind of shows. That one had a little more recreations to it, so it was kind of fun. It was fun going out in the Bay in Boston and recreating a battle. It was fun to go out with all those recreators that like to recreate the American Revolutionary War battles because they're still going strong. Those guys still do that. I have a friend back in Boston that is part of a group that recreates the American Revolution. So that was a fun show to do, actually.
You're credited as sound guy.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. You're trying to show me that? Yeah, that's what I've done my whole life. The sound guy.
Oh, Scott Terhark.
I'm sorry?
Oh, Scott Terhark.
I don't know who that is. Can you show me that name? Okay, a makeup person. I get that part, but you're going to show me the name? Hmm. I actually don't remember any of those makeup people. Um, there are so many people involved in making television and film. It's pretty amazing how that works.
Sure was. And I got my Baby Einstein shirt.
Oh, you do. Well, that's cool. Like I said, I never worked on that show, but I certainly use that show for my daughter, who's now grown up and is at Magic Mountain today. I don't see you any credits for Baby Einstein, do you?
Scott Terhark was the sound guy.
Yeah, I don't even know who that is. That was probably a guy back in New York, and I don't know all the New York guys because I'm sure that's where Baby Einstein was done. Sorry, maybe you should look him up. Blair now, right?
And what about Cold Case?
Cold Case was a CBS show also where they recreated um, basically murder cases, and I just worked on one episode of that. I don't know. Frankly, I wouldn't have put that in my IMDb because I only did one episode of that. All the other shows I've done multiple episodes or the whole movie or whatever. Cold Case, that's a show that went on for years and years, and they just picked me up for one episode. That was like 4 days of work, and then we were done.
And what about the life and times of Hank Greenberg?
Okay, now that's an interesting story. It's a true story. That was a documentary about a baseball player, who was a Jewish baseball player. And believe it or not, when baseball first started, they did not allow Jews to be in baseball. But he was so good, nobody could turn him down. The guy was like 6'3" or 6'4", and he um he was an amazing baseball player, and he also was friends with the famous shoeless Joe Jackson and all sorts of those crazy Babe Ruth and all those people he was friends with. But what he went on to do was to be a spy. He actually spied for the US while he was on tour in Japan. Now, this is before World War II. So he was able to go in as a sportsman, a baseball player, and nobody thought the wiser of him. And at night he would go off and he would take notes on the number of ships that Japan was building, and he would provide some valuable information for the military. But the cool thing I got to do is we got to interview all sorts of really old baseball players, and some of them, like two of them, just died like days after we did the interview with them. But we went all over the country and we did interviews, and it was all shot on film too. That was the nice part. So I got to use the classic Nagra recorder, which is a reel-to-reel recorder. That's the real old days kind of stuff. But this was done in the newer days where they had real video cameras, but they were doing this film style, which was a blast to do. I'm boring you. I'm sorry.
So, what was it like working on the Adventures of Pug and Zero?
No, Pug and Zero is maybe a show that you would have liked. It was a kids show, but it was done with puppets. There was one female actress, I can't remember her name now. She did very well. She was really good at it. But most of the time, it was Pug and Zero were two aliens from outside Earth, and they come to Earth to find out what Earth was all about and what people did on Earth. And so we did all sorts of crazy stuff, man. We went in the US DSRV, which is their rescue submarine for the Navy, the submarine that goes down to the regular submarine and rescue the submariners off of that ship if they have problems. We got to go down in that with it. We sent Pug and Zero up with the Elvis parachute guys in Vegas. Pug and Zero got to go to a roller coaster factory. Um, so that was a show where we traveled, and we got all over the place, and that was a blast. That was real fun. And it was fun doing a kids show, and it was well received, and everybody made good money, but they only decided to do 2 seasons of it, and that was it. They couldn't sell it anymore. So we stopped doing that show and we all moved on, went on to other places. But I've worked with all the people from that show since then, and I still know one of the puppeteers. Um, that was fun though. We went basically on adventures. We got to go with them on adventures, flying in jet planes and all sorts of stuff like that.
Do you have behind the scenes footage or photos of the show?
I'm sorry, I do not. I wish I did. No, I don't.
Okay. What about working on Extreme Hawaii?
Wow. Now that was a great show. That's a Discovery Channel show. They had the series called Extreme, and there was Extreme Alaska, Extreme Hawaii, there was Extreme Yellowstone, there was Extreme, I don't know, about three other of them. But I got to do the coolest one. On Extreme Hawaii, we actually, I spent time on almost every island in Hawaii. And I'll just tell you a couple of the adventures. I mean, some of them are pretty mundane, like the surfers of the North Shore, which are incredible, but you know, it's not as incredible as taking an Austrian guy who lived on Maui to the Big Island, where he had already done this one kind of a stunt where he took his sailboard and he sailed it right next to where the lava is flowing into the ocean. So you got lava flowing into the ocean, and he sailed right by it. And then somebody asked him, "Why'd you do it?" And he said something like, "To save, because I want to save Mother Earth," or something like that. So Extreme Hawaii hired him to do it again. We took him out there. We went on a big power boat, and the power boat had three engines on it. And that was because the captain of the boat said the hot water of the lava going into the water, it heats the water right there and it kills his engines. And he said, when I lose my second engine, I will just take off. I'm not going to warn you. I'm just going to take off. Okay, so that's part of the interesting story. The funny part is we shot the guy on his surfboard, surfing right in front of the lava. I mean, literally, if he came off that board, he would have cooked himself like a lobster. The water is so hot there. So he came around, he came by us, and I have my boom microphone extended way out. I mean, it's like 20 feet out because he's supposed to sail right past us. And the director said, "Now tell us, why did you do this?" And instead of saying what he said before, he said, "Because you made me do it." And the director got so angry, he almost jumped out of the boat to go throttle that guy's throat. He told the guy to go around and do it again and say what you said originally. And so he did it again, and it was fine. Okay, so now we get him into the boat. We get his sailboard and everything all put in the boat, all put away nicely. And now it's time for an interview. And it is an awesome interview. If you could ever see the episode, he is sitting on the back transom of the back of the boat. And behind him is a wall of lava coming down and splashing into the water and little pieces of basalt. Basalt is in lava, and when it hits the water, it explodes. So there's little explosions all happening behind him. I got my boom mic out, and the director starts to interview him. So now tell us why you did this, and blah blah blah. And they're doing all that regular interview stuff. And I'm standing on the boat. Director is sitting on a box in front of me, and the guy's sitting on the back of the boat. I could feel one of the engines stop. You can actually feel it because a little rumble, it rumbles and it stops. Okay. Oh, that's one engine. I'm counting in my mind. That's one engine. And they're continuing to do the interview. And I tapped the shoulder of the director saying, "We've lost one engine." He goes, "Oh, it's fine. We'll just keep going." So we keep going. And all of a sudden, I could feel the second engine stop. And all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but as the captain told us, he took off. And the surfer guy started to fall off the back of the boat. And I leaned forward and I grabbed him with my left hand. The director was falling towards him. I grabbed the director with my other hand. I had dropped my boom, and the surfer dude had grabbed the boom pole, and he was hanging on for dear life with the boom pole, but I did have him in my hand until the captain slowed the boat down. We all got in there. So what I want to say is I saved the Austrian surfer's life. He would have fallen into the boiling water and died. And that's my story from extreme Hawaii. There you go. I
Nice.
hope I told it well.
And what about Once Upon a Time, a Cinderella Story?
Oh, you know what? That was really a behind the scenes show that we did for that movie with Oh, who was the female? Um, Big time singer. Whitney Houston played Cinderella in a Disney remake of the Cinderella story, where it was a musical version of it. And she was singing all that stuff. So we shot all the behind the scenes of Whitney Houston in the studio singing her lines, Whitney on the stage doing her lines live, singing her song live, and all that kind of stuff. So that was basically just like you know, I did lots of behind the scenes of movies, and that was a fun one to do because Whitney Houston was really, really a neat person. No problems at that point that I knew of. And she was a professional musician and singer. She was incredible. So it was behind the scenes on that movie. I don't know how I got such a credit for doing that because I have literally done at least 2 dozen behind the scenes of movies and never gotten credit for that. Unless you watch the DVD where you will see my name in the credit for doing behind the scenes. So
Nice.
So I like when you went to Westworld in Hawaii where they're shooting Westworld and did interviews with Kevin Costner, who did that terrible movie that did terrible in the box office. They lost millions on that movie. Um, did behind the scenes for um, a number of Indiana Jones movies. Went to some really cool locations to do that. The coolest thing I did, though, I can tell you, is I have spent 3 times with Sir John Williams, the writer of all the Star Wars movies, music for all the Star Wars movies, music for Star Wars. I spent time with him in the studio when he was doing pickups to enhance the music of the films that we were doing behind the scenes of. So I went in with him for the second Indiana Jones movie and we were in there. And that was the second time I've been in there with him. I was in there for, I think, a Star Wars movie before that. Anyways, here in LA, and he said, "Well, let's have lunch. Hey, you guys, you have lunch with us." And so I went to lunch with John Williams and his assistant and another assistant. And I literally sat across the table from John Williams for lunch, and it was an absolute blast. And he is absolutely the nicest guy you would ever meet. He truly is a nice person. He's not a crazy director that I could mention other directors that are crazy. He's not. And he was just a total gentleman, and I had a blast talking with him.
And you worked on Blowout.
Okay, Blowout was a reality show. And that was a reality show based on a salon in Beverly Hills. I forget the guy's name who ran it, but it was just all the crazy things that happened in a in a salon where you're going to spend at least $500 to get your haircut cut. Um, that's all I remember about that. So I was the audio supervisor on that show. There were a bunch of audio guys on that show, but I was the one that was kind of in charge of all of them and the overall sound of the show.
And what about Tyson?
Now, Tyson was a documentary about Mike Tyson, shot by a very famous director, and I cannot remember his name. I just can't remember his name. But what I did really was just all the what's called original audio. So I'm the one that did all the sound for the interviews that were done with Mike Tyson, the real Mike Tyson. We started at a mansion in Beverly Hills, and we ended up on um, Muscle Beach in the Venice Beach area. And we recorded a ton of his words in a motorhome parked next to the beach. And that's the way it's sometimes done for original dialogue for documentaries is you find a place, any place. It could be a office building, a whatever. And in this case, it was a motorhome. And we recorded. all the dialogue for that movie in a motorhome with the crazy director that would spend more time asking a question than Mike would give in response for a question. Mike would, this guy would talk for like 15 minutes and Mike would say, yes. And the director realized finally at some point after about an hour and a half that he wasn't really getting anything out of Mike. He needed to word his questions a little better and not talk so long.
The director's name was James Tuback.
James Toback. Very good. Thank you for doing that research for me because I forgot his name. He's kind of a has a huge background in he wrote books. He was the friends with the Kennedys before they both died. He grew up with the Kennedys basically. So he went to Harvard. He edited the Harvard Review, which is apparently a very big thing to do. And he wrote the book Less Than Zero. He directed the movie Less Than Zero. That was they let him direct the movie on his book. And that was a big deal. And he did pretty well on that. So they let him direct another movie, which I can't remember. But somehow he picked up this movie to do the movie on Mike Tyson, who is doing very well right now. But the strange thing is when I spent my time with him, which is about 2 weeks, the guy was having problems putting two words together. So something happened because now he can put lots of words together. I don't know what happened to him.
And what about lights, camera, take action backstage with Disney friends? For
Yeah, that's just kind of like another behind the scenes show where no, wait a minute, I actually did the real show. What am I talking about? So that was a show where it was basically all the Disney actors would come. That was like an 80s show. I think it was in the 80s or 90s. Oh, it was probably in the 90s, near 2000 because like Britney Spears was in it. Britney Spears was one of the people talking. It was basically Disney people talking about the up and coming Disney shows of the holidays because Disney used to make special shows just for the holiday time, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. So it's not that big of a deal. It was just Disney people have done lots of Disney stuff.
and what about Beyond Scared Straight?
Oh, Beyond Scared Straight is a very cool show. That was with the same producer who produced Rescue 911. His name is Arnold Shapiro. And he did this great documentary back in the 70s or 80s, which I actually worked on, called Scared Straight. And this one was basically taking that and actually doing more of it. So, what it is you take kids who have already gotten in trouble with the law and you take them into a prison that's local to them, and they get to experience what life is like in a real prison. And they find out this is where you're going to end up if you do anything more bad. So it's kind of a way of scaring them from doing more crime so they don't end up in these prisons. And that was an interesting show to do. I mean, it was a documentary basically. We would take, I think it was 6 kids for each episode would be taken into a prison. But we would first document their lives, what they're doing before that. Go out with either be there were 3 camera people, and we were all going out with these kids and finding out what they're doing for a day, and then another set of 3 kids for the day, and then the final day was we go with them in the bus all the way into the prison, and they went all the way into this prison, and prisons had these programs, Scared Straight programs in the prison itself. And so there are certain prisoners which know how to scare the kids into understanding that this is not a place you want to be. So that was a good show to work on.
And you worked on MSNBC films.
Okay, so for MSNBC, I I've probably been in more prisons or in prison more than anybody you know because I have spent countless hours in juvenile prisons in the state of Indiana where we are doing these documentaries on kids that are in these prisons that are incarcerated. And like the most simple way to break it down is what do you do with a boy who got mad at his parents or his grandparents because they didn't have M&Ms and takes a gun and shoots them and kills them all. The boy has definitely lost it. Now, they have kids like that in prisons all over the country that just did a stupid, stupid, terrible, terrible thing when they were young. And the question is, what do you do with that kid? Does he spend the rest of his life in prison because of something that he did as a kid? Now, our laws kind of say, no, you don't do that. But like the state of Indiana is still fighting with that issue because, like, for instance, the kid's parents, relatives all think that he should still be in jail the rest of his life because they killed somebody that they loved, right? But it's a really tough thing to do. But you can find all of this stuff on YouTube under Calamari Productions. Calamari, as in the squid, Calamari Productions on YouTube, and you can watch all the episodes, and they're recutting some of them and they're trimming some of them up a little bit better that we did while we're in Indiana jails.
And you worked on The Millionaire Matchmaker.
Oh yeah, that was a crazy reality show where this person and her two cohorts um, hook up a millionaire with a date. They go on a date and they see if it works for them. So it was like every week there was a different millionaire. Every week there was a different date. And that was just a crazy reality show.
And you worked for Pit Boss.
Now, Pit Boss was kind of a fun show. That was a show with little people. And the the little people, they put together a little squad. There were four little people, and they went out rescuing pit bulls because Shorty Rossi, the head of the agency that they had, is loves pit bulls. He had like 10 pit bulls himself. Anyways, we went out with them, and most of the things were set up. They're not real. We take a pit bull and put it, on the other side of a fence, chained up wrongly and terribly, and these little people would all show up at the location and they'd break into the backyard, they'd get the pit bull and bring it to safety and make sure that it was well taken care of at a veterinarian's place and all that kind of stuff. And it was basically just a lot of kind of made up stuff, but sometimes there were a couple of things that were real. We just happened upon things one time when we're driving from one location to another, and that turned into a story all by itself. So kind of a documentary that one day, but most of them were all set up. It was just a reality show. There are tons of reality shows. There's still reality shows, and people still watch them all. I can't stand watching them myself.
You worked for Tamra's OC
Uh,
Wedding.
Yeah. So you've heard of the Housewives series. There's the Housewives of Beverly Hills, the Housewives of DC, and of course there's the Housewives of Orange County because they do housewives wherever there are rich families. And in Orange County, there are some very rich people too. So one of them decided to get married, and they did a whole show on her. It was like 2 or 3 episodes, I think. And so basically, I was hired to be the sound guy to follow her getting ready to get married, and then the actual marriage, the actual wedding ceremony, which was at a very ritzy hotel in Corona del Mar. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to make these things sound simple, but in my mind, they were very simple concepts.
And you worked on My Giant Life.
Yeah, another reality show, and that one involved women who are all over 6'4". So we had some people who were like 6'8", really tall women, and we basically followed one woman per week, I think it was, maybe a week and a half. And that made an episode. So there were, I think, like the first season, which I did, was like 12 different women. And that was kind of interesting. I mean, we traveled to do it. Went to Texas, went to Seattle, I think. But anyways, um, these people were all very interesting. It was very interesting to see the world from their perspective. I mean, can you imagine being a teenager and you do play basketball, but you don't want to be known for playing basketball, but you're a very good basketball player in the state of Texas, and you are 6'7", you know? So we took her to downtown San Antonio where they have a river walk there, and we hid cameras, and you could just see everybody's looking at her, and she's just walking down the sidewalk, and everybody just stares at people like that because they truly are unusual in our eyes. But I think this show made them not not that unusual, that they just had the regular problems that all of us had.
And finally, you got to work on Cake Legs.
Well, that was the last show I was credited for. I think I've probably done about 60 shows past then. Um, anyways, that was a show where you it was a contest where you had to build a cake that looked like something. And one was a cake that looked like um, the actress from the Brady Bunch, Marsha Brady. It was the Marsha Brady cake. And Marsha Brady actually came to judge whether or not the cake looked like her. It was kind of cool seeing Marsha Brady because, of course, every guy my age watched the Brady Bunch, and we all fell in love with Marsha Brady. So I got to see somebody I fell in love with when I was a kid. Anyways, she's very nice, and that was just a silly game show where they had 12 hours to build this cake to look like something, and that was on the Food Channel, I think.
Nice. And Baby's First Moves was turning 19 years old.
I'm sorry I didn't get that.
You know, Baby's First Moves was the 19th anniversary.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And do you watch Baby Einstein?
Well, I did with my daughter when she was a baby. It entertained her greatly. She loved watching that show. That was 22 years ago. She was probably 1 year old when she started watching it.
Okay. And what is your favorite Baby Einstein video?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I do not remember them well enough. I'm so sorry. I hope you're not offended by that, but I just don't remember them that well. That was a long time ago.
Nice. Well, David, thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you. I wish you the best in Labrador.
Is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, but I think it'd be great if you got an editor to edit these things together for you to make them a little more compressed between your question and my answer. That would make you look even better, is my
Nice.
suggestion to you.
Nice.
You know, the attention span of regular human is very, very short these days. You know, the average video cut from one scene to another is about every 5 seconds. Every 5 seconds. If you watch a regular TV show, it's going to change about every 5 seconds. And that just kind of shows that we have a very low attention span as humans. But you've done a great job. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, stay tuned for more guests coming up. Until next time, peace.
Okay. Peace out to you, brother.